you to have uncomfortable conversations on hot topics with people who don't share your same beliefs. Your host, Pete Berardi, Aaron Bear, Ricky Burney, and Brandy Taylor. Now let's get ready to have that conversation. Uncomfortable Conversations is powered by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship on Facebook.
Hey, welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversation Morning Show. My name is Brandy Taylor. Our mission each week is to encourage, equip, and empower our listeners to have those uncomfortable conversations on personal and social issues that impact our lives. We have Sabrina Protic, author of Growing Ageless and host of Thriving Women Talk Show that airs on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on the show today. How are you doing today, Sabrina?
Hey, I'm here. You know, we're up with the chickens.
We are up with the chickens. It is never too early to have these uncomfortable conversations, and we make them a little more uncomfortable by doing them bright and early in the morning.
Yes. Well, you know, last week we touched on a very sensitive topic. Every week we try to have an uncomfortable conversation with our co-hosts, which are Pete Berardi, PhD, retired Navy SEAL commander and CEO of Soft One, author of the book, The Path, Achieving Full Potential Through Self-Knowledge, and Ricky Burney, success coach and author of the book, Destined for Greatness, 90 Days of Transformational Affirmation. Gentlemen, we began a personal, enlightening conversation last week that may have surprised each of us. We talked about the 10 myths of domestic violence, and today we're going to continue that conversation with our guest and new co-host, Aaron Bear. But before we do, Ricky, can you introduce our new co-host of Uncomfortable Conversation to our listeners?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Our new co-host, Aaron Bear, is the author of the book, From Beaten to Badass, My Journey of Broken Blessings and How I Became My Own Hero. Erin's journey of broken blessings and how she became her own hero was released on October 25th, 2019 during National Domestic Violence Awareness Month in honor of all the survivors of domestic violence, abuse, and sexual assault. As a survivor, she promised that if she were ever in the position to give back, she would. Erin made it her mission to do just that and more. With every book sold, a portion goes back to organizations dedicated to empowering victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. In Colorado alone, there are 59 organizations that provide domestic violence programs at some level. And within the United States and Canada as a whole, there are 2,859 organizations. In 2020, Beaten the Badass has a goal to put a copy in every shelter across Colorado while expanding nationwide in the USA to give others hope and to show them that they too are a badass. Congratulations, Aaron, on your accomplishment for 1 year. I know how amazing that may feel right now. That's about 3 days ago. So I know you're probably still on a high about, having your book published over that time frame. And welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations team. We are definitely glad to have you. But I did want to do one thing before we move forward. There's going to be a few pictures that flash across the screen. I just want you to tell us a little bit about what it was like in each of these photos, because a photo tells a story. Tell us a little bit about this one first.
That is my wedding day on August 12th of 2012, or August 19th, 2012. And I was just so happy because I finally found a good guy. I found a man that, respected me and treated me the way I actually deserved. It took a long time for me to be comfortable with him because I always thought the other shoe was going to drop. This is too good to be true. But I think we can make our own fairy tales. We don't need to rely on Disney or any other storyline. We can make our own.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, next photo.
So that is when I was a bodybuilder. I was a big competitor for 8 years here in Colorado. And that show was in 2015. I dominated Colorado. I was sitting at 8% body fat and I took everything. I took the overall title and I qualified for nationals, which got me a sponsorship by the Bill Romanowski. It's a proud moment.
Nice. Okay, and I believe that is the last photo that we have. So Pete, can you take us into the next segment?
Absolutely. Hey, Greg, it's great to see you guys. Aaron, in honor of Domestic Violence Month, last week we shared 10 myths of domestic violence, and you gave us some great clarity on the topic. This week, we're going to share with our listeners the warning signs of domestic violence. But before we unpack that uncomfortable conversation, you've got to take the uncomfortable question challenge in order to be inducted as a conversation coach. So I hope you're ready. And Ricky, will you explain the challenge to Aaron?
Yes, absolutely. So the Uncomfortable Conversations Challenge is basically you will have 5 minutes to give 10 answers to 10 questions. Now, some of the questions may seem silly, some of them may seem surface level, some of them might be a little bit deeper. But the overall goal of what it is to, number one, be able to dismantle any assumptions that usually create the division that we see in this world. So we are trying to equip, empower, and engage our listeners so that they know how to have these uncomfortable conversations with any person in this world. So are you ready for this challenge? No pressure at all.
Bring it on.
Okay, perfect. All right. I will have Brandy, would you like to be our timekeeper today? Okay. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, perfect. So on the count of 5, we're gonna do it. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
I'm a badass, so you got to remember that. I can do this.
Right. Okay. All right. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you had one wish, Aaron, what would you wish for and why?
That there was no domestic violence or sexual assault anywhere in this world, and that's because nobody deserves to be treated as an object or property in any such way.
Absolutely. Name your most favorite and least favorite quality about yourself.
My favorite quality is that I am a woman of integrity. My least favorite is that I demand perfection from myself, even though we are perfect just the way we are.
Can you give me the name of 5 Black men that do not play sports?
Morgan Freeman, Dennis Washington, I don't remember his first name, Martin Luther King Jr., Ernie Barnes, who was a famous artist that I know personally, and that's 4, right? I need one more. Oh, that's 3? No, that was okay. Ernie Barnes, Morgan Freeman, Dennis or Washington, whatever his name is. Oh, that's tough. Give me a moment. If you would have said women, I would have gotten that. Ricky Burney, and I know more. Oh, my counselor from college, Dr. Albert Darden.
All right, perfect. Do you think that Black people deserve reparations for the suffering they endure in the U.S.?
Absolutely. No questions asked.
If you met Martin Luther King Jr., what question would you ask him and why?
What kept you focused on your goal? And what was your why? Like, what was your deep why? Like, what made you cry?
Okay. When was the first time you heard about Black slavery and how did it impact the way you viewed Black people?
So I've never seen color on people. I've always thought people were just people. And so slavery was brought to me, obviously during my elementary years. It hurt my heart. It hurt that people could treat people so badly and poorly.
And what books have you previously or currently reading that has helped you to understand racial injustice among Black people?
You know, I read a lot of business books. I actually don't read a lot of books that are focused on racist injustice, but there is one book that I'm interested in reading, and that is The New Green Deal by Jane Fonda. I don't know if that's the title, but it does pick up on all the different types of injustices, whether it's Blacks, women, racism, all of that. So it's a book I'm definitely putting on my list.
If you gave a keynote presentation to a group of Black Lives Matters members, what would the topic be?
That we are not defined by our circumstances. We are all badasses and we are in this together. And by raising our voices up, we can then implement change.
If your best friend was having an affair with a married man, would you have that conversation with her?
I would.
In your opinion, what is the biggest mistake men make when leading women and why?
Being misogynistic and objectifying us.
All right, perfect. You got through it. You got through it, and it looked like you had time to spare. So,
Yes, you didn't run out of time. So,
all right. So you are officially inducted as a conversation coach with the show. Congratulations. That was your induction. So again, the purpose of this activity is again to not only just ask the harder questions, but also to look at the root behind some of those other questions that might seem silly to some people, but it also again perpetuates certain stereotypes about people that we make when we don't have the experience of speaking to people that don't look or sound like us or come from the same background as us. So that is what we do here. And as you will see going forward, we will engage other people from different backgrounds in that same way.
That's great. Let's do it.
All right.
I think we're going to take a sponsor break. And then when we come back, we're going to have some more uncomfortable conversations about domestic violence.
Uncomfortable Conversations Talk Radio is sponsored by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship. You can follow all our hosts on Facebook. Search Trendsetter Mentor Group and join. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Uncomfortable Conversations. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are continuing our conversation on this topic. Sabrina, can you share with our listeners the 10 patterns of domestic violence offenders?
Yes. We kind of talked about this a little bit last week. We're going to get a little refresher here. So maybe you're not sure if you are a target of domestic violence or someone that you know, friend or family member. Well, let's go over these 10, and there are probably more. But perhaps this person calls you names, insults you, or puts you down, threatens you with bodily harm or even with a weapon. Maybe it's called confinement. They prevent you from going anywhere, or they discourage you from going to work or school or seeing family members. They try to control you in some way, maybe spending money or where you go, or prevent you or try to restrain you from taking needed medications. Even what you wear, they have much control or say so or influence on what you wear. They act jealous. They're just very possessive, and they're constantly accusing you of being unfaithful. This individual gets angry when drinking or using drugs or alcohol. They try to control whether you can see a healthcare provider for your own personal health. They hit you. They kick you. They shove you. They choke you. They restrain you. All types of things. Otherwise, just to hurt you. or your children or your pets. Sometimes they use other objects to hurt you, things that you love and care about. Maybe they force you to have sex or even engage in sexual acts that are against your will. They blame you for everything. They blame you for their actions. They blame you for hitting you or kicking you or shoving you. They blame you for their own adverse behavior against you. They threaten to tell your friends or family or colleagues or even community members about your sexual orientation or gender identity solely to embarrass you, to humiliate you, and to keep you underfoot. So these are just several of the identifying factors of someone who's perpetrating domestic violence against you. Last week, we had a frank and open conversation on the experiences of domestic violence with our new co-host, Erin. Erin, can you shine some kind of light on the patterns of how these things we talked about play a role in the process of taking control of the person that's being abused?
Thank you, Sabrina. So those patterns are very, very typical depending on the situation, but I need to emphasize that it starts small. It's not always so black and white. It can start with small manipulations such as using emotional abuse. So, putting you down and making you feel bad about yourself, calling you names, making you think you're crazy and saying, oh, I didn't say that, you took it wrong, and twisting your words around. So it usually starts very small and then it gets worse over time. So using intimidation, such as making you afraid of the way you're looking at her, destroying her property, abusing your pets, like you said, and then going into coercion and threats, threatening to either hurt you or themselves by committing, say they're going to commit suicide if you were to leave them, making you do illegal things. So then it can also, if you have children or you're the one that doesn't work or you are the one that works, and a lot of these patterns happened in my abusive situation several years, back in the day in 2008, 2009. Economic abuse, controlling all the money, not letting you spend anything, not letting you go to the store, or, saying that you have to give them your paychecks or you have to provide for them while they hold on to their money. And then also male privilege is a huge one, acting like the master of the house or the king and saying that you are a servant and you must serve him. This is female, it can go both ways, male and female, using the children against you, saying that they're going to take the children away from you if you say anything because you're an unfit mother, and harassing or threatening all sorts of different things. And then there's also, the sexual abuse, which for me, I was actually raped in my relationship. So this one hit home because it's definitely one of the powers and control that abusers use on their victims, because most of the time men are larger than women and can physically dominate over them. And then there's also the minimizing and denying and blaming. Say it was your fault if you wouldn't have looked at that person that way, or if you wouldn't have talked to that guy over there, or if you would have paid more attention to me, then it wouldn't have happened. Or, hey, you shouldn't have said that. It's your fault that you got hit. And a lot of these are very common, and it's usually not just one, it's usually a multiple of the power wheel. So I want a lot of people, I've got homework for all of our viewers, is to look up the physical violence and sexual violence power wheel and really get to understand what these are and what the patterns are, so you can start to see what the red flags are for domestic violence and abuse.
Wow, thank you for sharing that power wheel with us. I think that's a very useful tool that I know I haven't seen before prior to you showing this to us. So I really appreciate that. Definitely a tool for our listeners who may be experiencing domestic violence themselves, or know someone that are supposed to, or that is, experiencing this, or someone who's offending and actually the violent one. Pete, did you have some talking points on this for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't take the blame. You may not be ready to seek help because you believe you're at least partially to blame for the abuse in the relationship. And reasons may include your partner blames you for the violence in your relationship. But really, abusive partners rarely take responsibility for their actions. Your partner only exhibits abusive behavior with you. Well, abusers are often concerned about their outward appearances and may have very charming and stable, appear to be so, outside of your relationship. So this may cause you to believe that his or her actions can only be explained by something you've done. Or you might be reluctant to talk to other people about it because you might feel that no one will ever believe you or the situation you're going through because, that abuser is such a con artist. And, how could that person ever be that way? It's just a few talking points. Ricky, what about you?
Well, first, I just want to say that thank you, Aaron, for sharing that those experiences that you dealt with. I can just only imagine how horrible that is, and the things that you had to be able to overcome with that. And one thing I would say is, it's one thing with American women who have to go through that, or Americans in general have to go through that. But when you look at the immigrants, a lot of times they may feel as if they are trapped in a situation that they can't get out of. So if you are an immigrant, you may be hesitant to seek help based off of the fear that you will be deported. Language barriers, lack of economic dependence, limited social support can increase your isolation and your ability to access resources. Laws in the United States, though, guarantee protection from domestic abuse, regardless of your immigration status. Free or low-cost resources are available, including lawyers, shelter, and medical care for you and your children. You may also be eligible for legal protection that allows immigrants who experience domestic violence to stay in the United States. So regardless if you are an immigrant, if you are in a situation where you or your kid's life is in danger, take the necessary steps to get yourself out of that.
Sometimes domestic violence begins or increases during pregnancy, putting your health and the baby's health at risk. The danger continues after the baby is born. Even if your child is not abused, simply witnessing domestic violence can be harmful to the child. Children who grow up in abusive homes are more likely to be abused and have behavioral problems as other children. As adults, they are more likely to become abusers and think abuse is a normal part of a relationship. So, this is very important. Even if the abuser is not actually abusing the child, they can pick up on those behaviors and think that those are the normal behaviors of a relationship, which is very unhealthy for them. Sabrina, did you have something to comment on this?
Yes. So leaving an abuser can be dangerous. Consider these precautions. Call a woman's shelter or domestic violence hotline for advice. Make the call at a safe time when the abuser is not around from a friend's house or other safe locations. Pack an emergency bag that includes items you will need when you leave, such as an extra, day's clothing, keys. Leave the bag in a safe place. Keep important personal papers, money, and prescription medications handy so that you can take them with you on short notice. Know exactly where you will go and how you will get there. Aaron, did you have any thoughts or comments?
I do. So there's a couple of things. These are really great points. And usually I tell people to have an emergency bag at somebody's house already. So you don't have to worry about grabbing it or making sure you have everything. It's already put somewhere. Now, I want to teach everybody a sign language sign for domestic abuse, violence, saying that you're trapped at home. We're all on Zoom calls all the time. And this is something people may not know. So I challenge you to teach your friends, your family, and those around you this sign. So just watch me carefully. If I'm talking to you and we're having a conversation and you're asking me if everything is okay, and I go like this, and my hand is right by me, that's the sign for trapped at home. So you can do it, either way, but that's the sign. And that lets the person know that sees that sign, you need help, to call the police and have them come. So that's something that you can teach your friends, your family. Either hand works. It doesn't matter. I'm left-handed, so I use my left hand. That is very important for people to understand. And also make sure that you have a safe conversation with your friend and say, if I ever talk about, something bizarre like the sky is purple today, you know that maybe I'm in danger. So those are just a couple of tips.
Great, useful tips. I love those. Thank you so much for that, Erin. Those are tips that, I don't hear those being used a lot. So it's really good knowledge for us to have.
Excellent. So we're going to take a sponsor break right now. And when we come back, Pete and Erin will discuss the book From Beaten to Badass.
Hey, welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations. We're excited to welcome Erin Baer to the team as a co-host on the show. It's fantastic. Erin is the author of the book Beaten to Badass, My Journey of Broken Blessings and How I Became My Own Hero. Erin's organization, Beaten to Badass, is empowering those who have been beaten down by life to become the badass they're always meant to be. Whether it be domestic violence, sexual assaults, bullying, abandonment, infertility, or however life beats you down. Beaten a Badass is there to start the conversation, raise awareness, give back, and implement change. Erin, can you share with the listeners why you branded your book and journey with an elephant? And tell us what inspired you to start this national organization?
So, Pete, why the elephant? And you know what I tell them? You have to read the book. You have to read the book to figure out why the elephant. And I'll give you a little clue, but I usually don't tell people. But elephants have always been my favorite animal. I absolutely love them. Maybe I should stop there. But I feel a connection with these qualities of the elephant, and I only hope to be as majestic while living a life of integrity and confronting the elephants in the room. That's all I'm going to give you. And if you want to learn more, you got to read the book.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Hear that, everybody? We'll find out about that elephant. Your website states that in Colorado alone, there are over 59 organizations that provide domestic violence programs at some level. And within the U.S. and Canada, there are close to 3,000 organizations. What inspired you to start this sponsor book program, and how does it work?
So last December of 2019, I had just lost another baby. I actually didn't know I was pregnant. My husband and I had been struggling with infertility for several years, and I was rushed to the hospital, and I almost lost my life over a pregnancy I didn't know about. So I was rushed back to surgery, and my life was saved, and obviously I lost the baby and a tube. And so in December, I was feeling sorry for myself. I had just gotten off the high of my book being released and helping so much and being on the news and discussing my book and all the things and really making an impact locally here in Colorado. And I was just so tired of having a pity party. And I really wanted to get out of that rut. And I knew that my book was helping people because I was donating financially, but I knew there had to be more. I knew that I needed the book to get into the hands of the victims and the survivors, the ones that could relate to my story and understand that they are not defined by their circumstances. So I just thought, what if people bought the book, but they didn't get the book? They didn't buy it for them, and I sent it to shelters. Would that be something that people were interested in? So I posted it on December 27th last year. And within like 5 minutes, I got a hit on my post, and from there, it's been history. And it's been pretty amazing. We're in over 400 shelters across the country. We have 11 states fully sponsored, and we have 2 that are international, one in Canada and one in Ireland. So we're making a big impact, and it's not just the victims and survivors, but it's the advocates, the counselors, and the staff members of those shelters that are using the book as a resource guide, because they may not have personal experience when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault. They may be trained to handle those situations, but they don't necessarily have personal experience. So it has become a tool for so many.
As you think about that, if you go into that discussion with that, it comes to mind that so many times we can do things preemptively. And would you ever consider putting your book or trying to get your book into college campuses, into their counseling institutions where students go? And if they could see this book as a young adult, maybe they would have foresight to see these warning signs before they happened. A lot of times the shelters, it's after the fact. But how can I'm thinking to get that in there preemptively so they see what the signs and they can make the move before it goes from bad to worse. Just a thought.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually my next move. There's over 11,000 colleges and universities in the United States. And I'm actually working with my alma mater right now to start at the Title IX, so the resource centers that deal with the Title IX situations at colleges and universities, as well as the sororities within the campuses.
Absolutely.
So we're on the same wavelength, Pete.
Absolutely. And the federal grant program to subsidize you in a lot of ways. So as a nonprofit, there's a lot of things you can do with that. So have you considered that as well?
I have not, but I'm going to definitely look into it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It could definitely fund you and put you in a direction with a little bit more rigor, to say. So that would be pretty nice. You're blogging on your book for the next 10 weeks on Facebook in our Trendsetter Mentor group. Can you give us a breakdown of what we should expect to read about in that blog?
Absolutely. So my book is not just about domestic violence and sexual assault. Yes, the title is called From Beaten to Badass, but it's everything that life can throw your way. So whether it's abandonment, being bullied, raped, domestic violence, infertility, just anything really that we're always like, man, isn't life supposed to be easy? Well, it's easy, but complicated. So my blog really kind of takes my book and it breaks it down. So I really introduce who I am and the seeds that are planted in our life. What are the seeds? And then from there, I really want to define what beaten and badass is. And then from that point, I want people to realize that I had to find my own way, and I give them a glimpse into how I was introduced to the fact that not every person's a good person. They have the potential to be a good person, but sometimes our choices do make us not such a good person. With a bomb threat that happened at my school in 8th grade, one of the very first bomb threats in a school. And I was on the front cover. It was not me that put the bomb in the school. Let me clarify that. I was not the bomber. It was my gym partner. And then from there, I realized that we sometimes write or say something in our life in the past, and then it doesn't make sense until several years later. So I wrote a poem called The Day that is included in my book. And I share that with the audience through the blog. And that day is represented by the abuse that I endured, but not realizing I was writing about that, 8 years prior. Wow. And then I talk about the abuse. Yeah, it's pretty incredible how our mind works, knowing that we can probably really be in tune with, our other self and not realize it until way down the road. And then I talk about the abuse, finding the light within myself, thinking that my fire was burnt out, but it was found and, reignited by a friend. And then how abuse left me crumbled and defeated, but yet I had enough self-worth to find myself again through bodybuilding. And then how I feel my journey is really just beginning because I'm starting to write my second book. So
That's
kind of
awesome.
my breakdown.
What a rich depth of material. And boy, it's that inner voice I think I hear you talking about, you know, is you got to listen to that. Hey, Ricky, I don't want to hog all of Aaron's time on these questions because I got a zillion of them. You know, what have you got?
Sitting here waiting to ask my question because I just love the story right now. So, all right, thank you so much. And Aaron, once again, just kudos to you for everything that you're doing. And something that I was told before, and I hear it all the time, especially in the field that I'm in, is that if your vision doesn't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. So you said that you plan on taking this internationally, and I already see that, as you stated, this in Ireland as well. So not only nationally are you making some headway, but internationally, it looks like you're going there as well. So with all of your books and your material being all around the world, what do you kind of see as the vision of what you want to come from all of this? What do you see all of this hard work and dedication? What do you see being the result of everything that you're doing?
I want my book in every single shelter in the world. And if not one copy, multiple copies that become gifts for people to have for themselves, to hold on to remind themselves that they're a badass. And I mean, it's really that simple. And as far as, you know, what I want to do is I want to travel the world. I want to be considered the expert for, you know, becoming a badass and finding the hero within and really letting everyone know that they're not defined by their circumstances. They're a badass. They just have to get back up. It's really a choice that they have to make. We can't make it for them. We can try to help people and we can try to empower them, but they have to make that decision because they're truly the only ones that have that power. And, you know, really confronting those elephants in the room. What is the elephant? What is eating you up inside? I hate the saying, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, because elephants are like my thing. I mean, you can see elephants obviously in my background, but really we need to confront it. We need to start that conversation and we need to raise awareness, whatever it may be, and we need to give back and then we can implement change. We really need to empower people to bring their voices, whatever that elephant's bothering them, whether it's racism, you know, sexism, domestic violence, sexual assault, whatever, we need to let them know that that does not define them. That's what I really want the world to know.
Absolutely. And I love that metaphor of the elephant in the room, because honestly, that just segues into what we're doing here is we're addressing all the elephants in the room, having uncomfortable conversations. So Brandy, take us to the next question, because I think that actually goes into what you had a question about with her.
Aaron, how do you envision Uncomfortable Conversations morning show making a difference?
So my envision for our show is that we really dive deep into those uncomfortable conversations. We confront those elephants in the room. We show people the elephant and we say, okay, well, there's no way out until we confront this elephant. And I want us to help people open their minds to the concept that uncomfortable conversations does not need to be uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that you have to be uncomfortable. It's to hope. I really want people to understand that there are different perspectives. We're all different in many different topics. We are either educated or we're not educated. And just because you're not educated doesn't mean you turn a blind eye to. That's where you need to ask the questions. If I'm uneducated in something, I ask questions. It's not to make anybody else feel uncomfortable. It's to let me not be so naive. And I really think that, you know, having these uncomfortable conversations and discussing them and putting them in, you know, bluntly in people's faces, you know, is the right way, because I think as a country and as a world and as, you know, a universe, we've really gotten uncomfortable with having debates and conversations. People don't know how to conversate anymore. We need to really get back to basics, ask the questions and understand the whys and understand the different perspectives. So that's what I'm hoping that we can do with Uncomfortable Conversations.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the point that people are straying away from having uncomfortable conversations, because I do agree. I think that with everything that's gone on in 2020, there are a lot of uncomfortable conversations that people want to have, but they just don't know how to initiate those. Sabrina, did you have any questions for our new co-host, Erin?
Yes, I did, Erin. So if any of our listeners that are listening today, Erin, if they are in an abusive relationship, what does step one look like for them?
To acknowledge it and to reach out to someone that they trust and let them know what's going on and to seek help, to let the person they trust to say, look, I'm scared. I don't know how to do this. Please help me. And that's the first step. And then the receiver, the friend that they're reaching out to, needs to not judge.
Wow.
So whatever end you're on, seek help, or please don't judge. Don't ask them what they did. Don't ask them why they're just now leaving. Just help them.
So you've heard it here today on this show, how to initiate that first step to get out of an abusive relationship. We're going to take a sponsor break. And when we come back, we're going to go to one of our most favorite parts of the show, Love It or Leave It. We'll be back.
Now it's time for Love It or Leave It, the segment where our hosts decide should you have that uncomfortable conversation or leave it alone.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Uncomfortable Conversation. This segment is called Love It or Leave It, and is powered by Emerging Excellence LLC, a brand focused on re-engineering the mindsets of millennial professionals. Love It or Leave It works like this. Each week, we read emails from our listeners and who need advice on from our conversation coaches, Pete and Ricky. Erin will read the email, and Ricky and I will share the perspective on the question and make a recommendation if they love it or if they leave it and not have the conversation. All right, our first email is from Baltimore, Maryland. I am a newly married stepmother of 2 teenage boys. I have a 15-year-old daughter that lives with me. My husband and I work full-time, and the teenagers are home together all day because of the coronavirus and Zoom scheduling. I feel uncomfortable with my 15-year-old daughter being home alone with them, but I do not know how to have this conversation with my husband. Maybe it is my fear, but I think one of his sons likes my daughter. Should I have this conversation?
Well, Rick, you want to start, or would you like me to start?
Rick,
Let the married guy start first.
Hey, I got this. All right. All right. So you've got some adolescents there. They're not related. It's a new relationship. You've just been married recently, so you've got kids, high school level. It would not be unnatural for one of them to have an interest in a person that they find attractive in some way. Is it kind of weird? Yeah, it's kind of weird because there's a family dynamic there. But what's going on with that? One, yes, you got to have that conversation. Have it with your husband. You're married. Wake up. Have the conversation, and also have the conversation with your daughter too. So you know what? Discuss it. It's not unnatural. It's not incestual, but it's uncomfortable. Whoa, right? And what are you gonna do? You know what? Don't put. Maybe you need to do something to keep the wood away from the spark, okay, and the oxygen. Because when you put those things together, it's not an easy one. I'll tell you that, because it's uncomfortable. Hence the conversation. But you need to have the conversation. And what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Again, you've brought people together. And you can discuss it with your daughter, discuss it with your husband. Don't accuse the son of anything, because everybody's normal. There's nothing nefarious here, or I think, bad. I just think it needs to be addressed. Ricky, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it sounds like a Brady Bunch situation here.
Yeah, doesn't it?
It sounds like a Brady Bunch situation. So what I would say in that is have the conversation with your husband. And having a conversation isn't necessarily to accuse his son of trying to come at your daughter, but is basically just to kind of let him know your concerns. And then it also allows you to be more secure in that he has provided his children the tools to be able to treat her in the right way. And even if he maybe has a crush, it doesn't mean that he's going to necessarily act on that, you know, because he does realize that now they are a family unit, and that kind of complicates things. 15 years old, you know, they see someone on the street, they're going to like them, they're going to like somebody else. So unless there's something that is very alarming, something that's going on, I honestly don't think it's anything serious, but it is a conversation that you can have, because if you don't have a conversation, it's going to create even more tension, going to create more hostility, and also possibly divide in the dynamics of how you handle the children. So have a conversation.
That is so spot on.
Aaron, can you read our next email for us?
Yes. So the second email is from Phoenix, Illinois. I am biracial and I just moved into a new majority white school district. My new friends think that I am white, and they tell me how much they hate that Black people are moving into their neighborhood and attending their schools. I try to defend Black people, but they insist that Black people are bad for the community. I feel that I am alone, and if I tell them I am biracial, they will stop being my friend. Does it really matter if I just let them think what they want, or should I have this uncomfortable conversation? I would love to hear Ricky's perspective first.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I am going to say to absolutely have the conversation. And the reason I say that is because in this scenario, the person is able to, in a sense, pass as, you know, white because they are biracial. And obviously the people don't realize that they do identify with the Black part of who they are. But this person is also struggling with something that many of us do, which is embracing our identity. And what comes to the surface is, are you going to worry more about being accepted, or are you going to worry about being acknowledged? Because a lot of people want to be accepted, but they're trying to be accepted by people who don't truly acknowledge who they are, their culture, their identity, their background. And even though I'm not biracial, my culture is something that I had to be completely in tune with, especially in corporate America. A lot of times I did not want to express that I went to, say, Essence Festival, which is a major Black festival that has arts, entertainment, food, empowerment, education. But I was afraid to tell that to my coworkers because I didn't want them necessarily to see me as someone who engaged in Black affairs like that. But then I realized, I mean, am I going to hide and suppress my culture and my identity just so someone accepts me? If I have to do that, that means that they truly don't accept me in the first place because they don't see me for who I am. So this person, I feel, needs to do the same thing. They're trying to be accepted by someone who really doesn't mean them well in the long run. They're going to suppress themselves. They're always going to compromise who they are. They're going to always find that internal struggle. So I would say have the conversation. Let them know who you are. Let them know that what they're saying is disrespectful to who you are, and focus more so on being acknowledged as a person. Because when you acknowledge yourself as a person, you don't have to be accepted. You don't have to chase people. You'll attract the right people.
Wow, Ricky, I think you're spot on. You know, I really like the way you talk about acceptance and compromise and whatnot. Because so many people, they want to be accepted, and in doing so, a lot of times people compromise their values just because they don't want to feel like an outsider. You know, regarding this, you absolutely have the conversation, but two, pick your friends. You know, if you can't talk freely and you feel uncomfortable around people because of, you know, their values or what they assume to be their values, you know, do you want them to be your friends? Is that really the kind of life you want to carry yourself forth in? So have the conversation with yourself and evaluate that. And it's, you know, being a new person, you want to be accepted, you want to have friends, but you talk about compromise, and I would never compromise my values. And I guarantee, in a large school, not everybody is of that mindset. And a lot of times, too, some people don't even know why they have those values. They're just going with the flow of the river and are afraid to, swim against it or swim out of it. And if they know who you are, how cool you are, all the great things that are about you, and oh, by the way, you're biracial, maybe that could start opening the eyes to, how wrong these negative thoughts are. So, you have to have that conversation and hopefully, share who you are and demonstrate, by being just you and not compromising your values, having that internal strength and being, not hanging out with people who are really all that negative all the time. Maybe some of them will change, but definitely have that conversation. Saying or hearing the words, "we need to talk," it often provokes feelings of uneasiness, and mainly because these words acknowledge the elephant in the room, and something is unresolved and needs to be addressed, because being unresolved, it remains uncertain, and uncertainty is an emotional state that we as humans are not huge fans of. So our natural inclination might be to respond with preemptive defensiveness, or the belief that we are right in an effort to create certainty and stability, and perhaps also to preserve our egos. And add to this the fact that we all have beliefs about conflict and confrontation that were shaped by our past experiences and our cultural backgrounds as well. So for many people, these words might also elicit feelings of fear, dread, and perhaps the tendency to avoid conflict, just in order to keep the peace. But what if we're speaking or hearing these words? What if we do this and things could be reframed as a need for connection, closeness, and deeper understanding?
Yeah, I agree with that, Pete. I agree. Oftentimes we need to share our perspective, clear the air, or let someone know how we feel in order to engage our relationships with greater authenticity and richness. Having those difficult conversations, whether you are the addressee or the one that's being addressed, is a crucial element to relational depth. If you are planning on having that conversation, whether you want to have it soon, before the holidays, or mentally bookmark it for a later date, here's what you need to do. You need to prepare yourself. So much of a difficult conversation is how you prepare ahead of time. Try to remain reasonable and balanced in your expectations, and let go of wording things in your head ahead of time with the goal of convincing the other person that you're right. So don't go in trying to convince. Just take the time to try to understand. And as we had these last two examples, that's what part of it is going to be. And what I would like to do is I would like to have the ladies to just kind of weigh in on those scenarios, because I think it's very important that we have those conversations. And I know that sometimes as men, we see communication in a different way and how to go about addressing those things. So I would like to see how you all would like to address both of those scenarios that we have.
All right, you can go ahead and start, Sabrina.
Okay. Well, I particularly want to weigh in on the conversation about the 15-year-old daughter, because I raised a son and a daughter, and it doesn't matter if it's family sheltering together, because there's also friends. And I was always concerned, my husband and I, about what was going on when there was mixed company in the house. It doesn't take long for things to happen. So we had a couple of rules in the house. No closed doors. Our kids were not allowed to close their door, company or not, no closed doors. And then we also, I think Pete made a comment to this, talk to your daughter. So we always had a conversation with our daughter about her personal decorum and her behavior at home, even around her brother, her biological brother. So she had to always dress appropriately. So you empower the woman, which was our daughter, and we always were on her about her decorum and her personal body and what her behavior should be like around her father, her brother, and her friends. So those were like easy fixes, and it wasn't a one-time conversation. We always revisited that regularly so that we stayed on top. And then, so you empower the family, you empower your son, your daughter, you have that conversation with the kids, with the step boys. Everybody's on point with their personal decorum and keeping those doors open. That was how we handle it in our home.
Perfect. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Brandy or Aaron?
I do agree about keeping the doors open. I would definitely have a conversation with the daughter and the son. I would have a conversation with each of them individually first, and then I would have a conversation with them together. First, I would want to get each of their mindsets. You know, do you have feelings towards, you know, this person, blah, 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 before I put them in a situation where they're just uncomfortable in front of their new stepbrother and having an uncomfortable conversation. And, you know, I agree with keeping the doors open. I didn't have brothers or sisters or step siblings, so I didn't have any other kids at my house. So I don't really have much experience with that, but I know teenagers will be teenagers and, you know, things will happen. But, you know, you do want to keep all communication channels open, keep all doors open, and just know what's going on with your children at all times, and let them know that you'll be there if, you know, anything comes up in their lives whatsoever, you know, that they can come to you, and just make sure that you are there for them and you know what's going on. What about you, Aaron?
I would agree with all of you. I think having those conversations is very important. The one thing I want to mention is that if the wife is having these feelings or thoughts or fears, I bet you the husband is too, but he's also afraid to bring it up, thinking, oh, maybe I'm just being silly or I'm overthinking this. And so being the one that steps up and says, hey, honey, can we talk about this? I don't know if you have the same feelings or thoughts, but I would like to get your perspective. And I think that will allow the communication between both the husband and wife to be more fluid and more open, and then being able to have those uncomfortable conversations with the children, because there's going to be other things that do come up. It's not going to just be this one instance. There'll be other things that they're going to have conversations with their children, either separate or together.
All right, guys, I think this is almost a wrap for this week's show. I thank you all for taking time to be with us and have these uncomfortable conversations this morning. I want to take a moment to give a special thanks to Sabrina. This is her last week with us, filling in during this time of transition, during our, integrating a new host. And I want to also give a warm welcome and a thanks to Erin. This is her first of many weeks with us on the Uncomfortable Conversations morning show. And thank you to our conversation coaches, Ricky and Pete. As usual, we've had some great uncomfortable conversations this morning. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
You can follow our host on Facebook. Search Trendsetter Mentor Group. Join. Email your uncomfortable conversation questions to npartners@yahoo.com. We will address your questions on next week's show. Let's have that conversation.